I'm going to ask that you answer only the question you're being asked. Ms. Wilmot will have an opportunity to ask you some follow-up questions, and she can clarify anything at that point that you think should be clarified. Mr. Martinez, you may continue.
And when she came over unannounced, as far as you know, correct?
Correct.
Objection, this characterizes the testimony.
Overruled, you may answer.
And your answer was correct, right?
I actually don't know.
Well, ma'am-
As far as I know, she was not invited.
Ma'am, you said correct previously, right?
As far as I know, it's correct.
Ma'am, you didn't add as far as I know, did you? Previously.
No, I didn't.
And when she was there, ma'am, one of the things that the defendant was able to see through the light of the television, that what Mr. Alexander was kissing this other woman, correct?
I believe so.
And isn't it true that the defendant was also able to see that at some point the brassiere was being hooked or unhooked at some point, correct?
Correct.
So she was there for a period of time to watch Mr. Alexander in an intimate moment with somebody else, right?
Objection, speculation, and foundation.
Overruled.
I don't know how long she was there, Mr. Martinez.
She was long enough to see what you just described, correct?
Correct.
And at that point, isn't there an indication, at least from Mr. Alexander's behavior, that he was done with the relationship because he had moved on to another woman, right?
No, that's not true.
So an indication, so Mr. Alexander being with another woman is not an indication that he is done with the relationship with Miss Arias. Yes or no? The way you see it, yes or no?
It is not a yes or no. I cannot give that a yes or no.
And isn't that, though, an indication, again, if we're talking that Mr. Alexander was extremely frightened of the stalking behavior of the defendant, isn't that an indication of stalking behavior to go over to an ex-boyfriend's house and look inside the window while he's in an intimate moment with another woman? Yes or no?
No.
All right? And ma'am, one of the things that you told us was that you relied on these journals, right?
In part.
In part. And you took them to be true, correct?
I took them to be part of what I considered.
I'm not asking you what you consider. I'm asking about the content itself. Isn't it true that you took these journals to be true? Yes or no?
The journals in corroboration with the other information, Mr. Martinez.
So the answer is yes, you took them to be true because you say you did some corroborative work, correct?
I did a lot of corroborative work.
Right, and so what you're saying is you took them to be true based on your investigation, right?
I would need to know what part you mean that I took to be true.
All of the journals. You took those to be
I
true.
cannot tell you that I took in toto and there would be a piece here and a piece here that I wouldn't question or wouldn't want to know. So you're asking me about pages and pages of journals. If you can be specific, I could answer that.
How about the one on August 26th of 2007? You took that entry to be true, didn't you?
Will you refresh me with that journal
Sure, let's
entry?
take a look at it. Does that refresh your recollection about what we're talking about?
Yes.
And in fact, this was written after the defendant had engaged in this behavior when she went over to Mr. Alexander's house unannounced and looked inside. You're aware of that, right?
Yes, I am.
Isn't that an indication of a stalking state of mind, given the fact that Mr. Alexander has indicated that he was extremely frightened because of the defendant's stalking behavior?
Objection, this characterizes testimony with regard to when the IM was created.
Sustained.
Ma'am, in terms of the message, you know when it was written, don't you?
Excuse me?
You know when this was written, don't you?
The Reagan-Housley?
Yes.
That was written in 08, I believe.
Right. And do you know approximately when in 08 that it was written?
I'm not sure the date in 08, but it was written in 08.
And this is in August 26th of 07, right?
Correct.
So this would be before this instant message, correct?
Correct.
And this was written the day after this, not peeping, but looking into the window took place, correct?
Correct.
Isn't that an indication of stalking behavior?
No.
And ma'am, you said that you looked at these entries and that you corroborated what was in them, right?
I looked at lots of entries. I
And-
didn't corroborate each and every entry. No, I didn't.
You looked at corroborative evidence, is what you told me, right?
Correct.
Well, in this, and if you want to look at, I want you to look at all of it, isn't it true that it makes no mention there or anywhere else of the defendant going over to Mr. Alexander's house, looking inside the window and seeing him with another woman? It doesn't say anything about that, does it?
No, it doesn't.
And so that's an indication that these journals, whatever they may be, one thing is that they're not truthful, are they?
Objection mischaracterizes the journals.
Overruled. They're not complete.
And incomplete means being untruthful, doesn't it, in this context of this investigation, doesn't it?
It does not mean untruthful. It means incomplete.
Where does it say here in this entry of Sunday, August 26th of 07, that the defendant admits that she engaged in a stalking-type behavior of going over to Mr. Alexander's home, looking inside through the window, and seeing him with another woman? Does it?
Objection mischaracterizes her testimony as to characterizing its stalking behavior.
Overruled.
Anywhere in there does it say that?
No.
So that would be that, what do you attribute that to? Because before you were telling us that these messages, or not these messages, but these journals, that they were influenced by this law of attraction, right?
Right?
Are you now telling us that because of the law of attraction she didn't write it in here? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
And she didn't, the bottom line is she didn't write it here, correct?
She didn't write it there.
And we don't have a complete picture of what was going on if we start basing what we do on these journals, correct?
We need to be basing them and probably looking at the numerous other women he was with at the time he was with the woman on the couch, that there were other women, and that because he was with one woman didn't mean he had ended a relationship with another woman.
Ma'am, how many other women was Mr. Alexander with in this period of time in August of 2007? You keep saying other women. How many other women? Go ahead, give me a number.
Well, there was Lisa.
In August of 2007. You are absolutely certain he was with Lisa in August of 2000. I'm over here. You keep looking to your left. In August of
I'm going to look over here.
In August of 2007, ma'am. Are you
I
absolutely...
have a list of people he was with from December 2007. Some of them he was with before. There was a Nicole Broadband who talked to him prior to that, who was talking to him in 2007. There was Jodi Arias, and there was someone else in 2007. Most of my data comes from December 2007 to June of 2008. And those are the emails I have.
And you indicated talking to some other woman, correct?
I indicated that he was at least communicating with Deanna at this time. He was communicating with Nicole at this time. He was communicating with Jodi Arias at this time, and he was communicating with Lisa at this time.
And in your standard, the standard that you are applying, in this case, if Mr. Alexander is talking to another woman, he's a bad guy, right? Because
no,
isn't that how you're portraying him in this case? That he's a bad guy because he's talking to all these other women, right?
No, not at all. Overruled.
So he's a good guy then.
The prosecutor's tone.
Approach.
Just because he's talking to other women doesn't mean that he's doing anything with them, is he?
There's flirtation.
And you see, applying your standard, you see that as something bad on the part of Mr. Alexander, don't you?
You ask me bad
No.
or good, and I don't see the world in bad and good. Mr. Martinez, I see the world with lots of shades of gray, and so I'm not going to go bad and good with you. I can't do that.
Well,
there's gray in there.
one of the things that you told us, or you told me during the interview, was that you're old-fashioned, right?
That doesn't...
Yes or no? Yes or no?
Sure, I told you I was
And ma'am,
old-fashioned.
Is it somehow that you were offended from that point of view that Mr. Alexander, after he's broken up, or after they've broken up, by your standard, after they've broken up, are you somehow offended, and so that it impacted your view of the evidence just because Mr. Alexander, according to you, may be talking to other girls?
No, not at all. I have two older children. I have been through the 60s. I have been through the 70s.
Sustained.
Ma'am, you don't know whether or not Mr. Alexander was engaged in any sort of sexual behavior with Deanna during this time, do you?
No, I don't.
You don't know if he was involved with any sexual behavior involving Lisa Andrews, correct?
No, I don't.
And you believe that he was involved with Lisa Andrews in August of 2007, right?
He was involved with Lisa Andrews in the later part of 2007, and it may have been in October. It may not have been then. I don't know who this young woman on the couch was. I don't.
I'm not asking you about that. I'm asking you about Lisa Andrews, correct?
Lisa Andrews may not have been until later, but I'm not sure. It was an 8-month relationship. It ended in March. So let me, just a second, you're asking me, so let me go back. August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. He would have been involved with Lisa Andrews at that time.
So he was involved with Lisa Andrews. And you don't know whether or not they were involved in he was involved in any sexual activity with Miss Andrews at that time, correct?
I know that Miss Andrews wrote
Yes or no?
Miss Andrews wrote something talking about them making out too much.
But you don't know the date, do you?
There's a date on the journal. I'm not specific on the date, so I don't know, but he was involved with Miss Andrews at that time. So if she was the woman on the couch, there was something sexual. If she wasn't the woman on the couch, he was involved with her and involved with somebody else that he was being sexual with.
And that to you, even though he is no longer with Miss Arias because there's been this breakup, that to you is something you take into account, right? Yes or no?
I take into account.
Yes or no?
Yes, I take it into account.
And now, ma'am, with regard to Lisa Andrews, one of the things that you indicated to us was that in that letter that she wrote, that she complained about Mr. Alexander's inappropriate sexual advances, correct?
Yes.
In fact, though, do you know that Miss Andrews came in here and testified? Do you know about that?
Yes, I do.
And do you know that she actually said that she was the one that actually took the improper advances towards Mr. Alexander and that he refused them? Did you know that?
Objection. This characterizes Ms. Andrews' testimony.
Approaching it.
You don't know whether or not it was Miss Andrews who initiated the intimacy with Mr. Alexander, do you?
No, I don't.
So when you look at the document, you're really basing it on something that is incomplete, right?
I'm basing it on what Miss Andrews says.
No, you're basing it on what was written in a document, correct?
Correct.
You weren't here when she testified, correct?
I was not here when she testified.
And you didn't go out and interview her, correct?
No, I didn't. I read 3 interviews by her, or more than 3.
But you didn't go out and talk to her yourself, correct?
I did not.
Now, and this issue involving the looking in the window happened in August of 2007, correct?
Correct.
And nothing is written here in this August 26th of 2007 journal entry, exhibit number 510, about that particular incident where the defendant came over and looked in the window, correct?
Correct.
And ma'am, as you understand it then, the defendant then came over the next day and spoke to Mr. Alexander about this particular event that she had seen, correct?
Correct.
And again, doesn't that seem like stalking behavior to you that they are broken up as of June or July of 2007, that she moves to Mesa, Arizona near him, and then comes over to his house unannounced at night, sees what she sees, and then confronts him? That does not appear to you to be stalking behavior?
Not when I look at everything else.
Okay, so it does not appear to be stalking behavior. But it does, at that point, after she sees him with another woman engaged in this intimate contact, is when the stories start about whether or not he is abusing.
Overruled.
The stories start about whether or not he has abused her physically, right? It was immediately thereafter, right?
It was in October.